Today, we finally acknowledge the obvious, that Jerusalem is Israel's capital. This is nothing more or less than a recognition of reality. It is also the right thing to do. It's something that has to be done.
Trump also announced plans to move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to here, Jerusalem, a process that could take years. But recognition of the city as Israel's capital is immediate, and the impact was very real right away. And that didn't take long. This is Ramallah in the West Bank late tonight. Perhaps the first shots fired in response to the U.S. president's declaration. Bullets just in the air for now. People just marching in the streets for now. A turning off of the Christmas tree lights in Bethlehem. More symbolism on show. Again, this is it for now. Truth is, there is no clear what next for Palestinians. They're hardly surprised at Donald Trump's move, but that doesn't take the edge off the frustration. And not all buy Trump's plan to keep pushing for peace, somehow.
We want an agreement that is a great deal for the Israelis and a great deal for the Palestinians. We are not taking a position of any final status issues.
Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas had a speech ready to go right after Trump's. He called the president's words constraints to all the efforts towards realizing peace, said they amount to the U.S. withdrawing from a role as a peace mediator. Abbas has mused about withdrawing security cooperation with Israel, but that's a big card to pull, and he might not have a lot to work with. How this lands depends on where you live. In Israel's West Jerusalem, such a quiet, wet night. The city had thought about celebrations tonight, but canceled them, apparently out of caution. Politicians advised to be mindful with their words. The Prime Minister, of course, fulsome.
President Trump, thank you for today's historic decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. The Jewish people and the Jewish state will be forever grateful.
So is it a bold and courageous act, a recognition of reality? As Derek Stoffel explains in Jerusalem tonight, Trump's move divides opinion in a divided city.
Storm clouds gathered over this ancient city, the site of some of the most contested real estate anywhere. But Jewish Israelis didn't let some rain dampen what they say is an historic day.
We were waiting for this for 2,000 years, since the Romans left Jerusalem for good. And now we know that not only us, the world knows that Jerusalem historically belonged to the Jewish people forever, for lasting and ever. There is no doubt for it.
Well, I'm all for it. I think it's a long time coming. I think it's a very, very important statement.
This is the main market in West Jerusalem, where Jewish Israelis come to shop. You won't find many Palestinians here. This is a divided city, with Palestinians living in East Jerusalem, an area where they want the capital for their future state. In the main market in the east, alongside the herbs for sale, a sense that Donald Trump has now clearly and firmly picked his side.
We Palestinians all know that the U.S. is supporting Israel all the way. So we actually, for educated people, it doesn't make any difference. It's not going to change anything to us.
So what does change here? Hi, Daniel. We asked Daniel Seidman, an Israeli lawyer and leading expert on Jerusalem.
Jerusalem will be as contested as ever before. It will be as divided as ever before. It will be as binational as ever before. The only change will be that the United States will have driven itself into abject isolation. It will have disqualified itself from a role as fair broker, and that is a huge change.
That is what angers so many Palestinians, that the peace process over all these years appears to have been an illusion. This means war, not an intifada, she says, a big war backed by all of the Arab people against this decision. Jerusalem is a city where high-running tensions are simply part of daily life. Now, with Trump's declaration, the concern is that the move will spark protests and perhaps violence in the coming days. Derek Stoffel, CBC News, Jerusalem.
So why is the U.S. president making this change now? Lindsay Duncombe has more about what is really behind Trump's move.
Donald Trump is pitching his plan as a fresh approach to finding peace.
We cannot solve our problems by making the same failed assumptions and repeating the same failed strategies of the past.
But what happened today is at least as much about domestic politics as it is about international deal-making.
We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
Trump wasn't the first presidential candidate to make that promise. Bill Clinton did, so did George W. Bush. Once elected, those men realized the potential consequences of such a promise and backed away.
Today,
not Trump.
I am delivering.
And delivering to two key elements of his base. Evangelical Christians, many of whom believe making Jerusalem the capital of Israel is a prerequisite for the second coming of Christ. And donors, especially this one, a pro-Israel casino magnate who donated $25 million to help Donald Trump get elected.
This decision is not intended in any way to reflect a departure from our strong commitment to facilitate a lasting peace agreement.
Intention or not, many believe with this move, the U.S. is picking sides.
People in the Arab world and across the broader Muslim world, I think, will interpret this as the United States essentially legitimizing exclusive Israeli control over Jerusalem. I do think that it is the end of an American-led peace process.
Others, though, see some promise, arguing that making Israel happy with this might be leverage enough to win concessions in the future.
Trump is a disruptor. He does things differently than conventional wisdom would dictate.
Disruption, after all, is how Trump ran his business, how he runs the Oval Office, and now how he influences the world. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Washington.
And Trump's actions today are already having consequences throughout the Middle East. And that didn't take long. This is Ramallah in the West Bank late tonight. Perhaps the first shots fired in response to the U.S. president's declaration. Bullets just in the air for now. People just marching in the streets for now. A turning off of the Christmas tree lights in Bethlehem. More symbolism on show. Again, this is it for now. Truth is, there is no clear what next for Palestinians. They're hardly surprised at Donald Trump's move, but that doesn't take the edge off the frustration. And not all buy Trump's plan to keep pushing for peace, somehow.
We want an agreement that is a great deal for the Israelis and a great deal for the Palestinians.
So in all this, what about Canada? Well, Global Affairs Canada leaves questions of the city's status to a negotiated settlement between Israel and the Palestinians. As you heard, that's pretty standard around the world, but there was a moment when Canada almost went down a different road.
Good evening. The two-day-old government of Joe Clark appears headed for its first diplomatic crisis, a serious confrontation with the Arab world. And it's all because Prime Minister Clark seems determined to go ahead with his promise to move the Canadian embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
Just like Trump, Joe Clark campaigned on moving the embassy, and in 1979, he was poised to do it.
We now have an opportunity to take an action that will back up what we've been saying.
The reaction, by now, will sound familiar.
It's going to put lots of obstacles and spell gas on the existing flames.
Clark dispatched a former Conservative Party leader to the region to measure the pros and cons, and we know which side won the day.
A change in the location of the Canadian embassy in Israel could be seen as prejudging negotiations among parties in the Middle East and might in fact work against progress towards a just and lasting peace settlement. The Canadian embassy will stay in Tel Aviv.
That's been Ottawa's position ever since.